Princess Lirelei stood at the tall window of her tower room, watching the 3 purple moons of Zephyra rise above the crystal spires of the capital city. Her long silver hair fell across her shoulders like liquid starlight, but her violet eyes held no peace. The court had stripped her of most of her titles 3 months ago, and the whispers in the palace corridors grew louder each day. She had refused to marry Lord Vextar, the brutal warlord who ruled the mining worlds of the Kalthari system. The marriage would have brought the Zephyrian Empire valuable resources and military support. But Lirelei had seen the scars on the servants in his palace. She had heard the stories of his cruelty. When she told her father she would not wed such a monster, the entire court had erupted in scandal. "A princess does not refuse her duty," the nobles had said. "She brings shame to the royal blood." Now she was called the shamed princess, and no other suitable lord would consider her for marriage. The whispers said she was too willful, too proud, too dangerous to control. Her father, Emperor Thaction, had grown cold and distant. Her younger brother, Prince Valdris, barely spoke to her anymore. The door to her chamber opened without a knock. Emperor Thaction entered, his massive frame filling the doorway. At 7 feet tall, with dark blue skin and glowing yellow eyes, he was an impressive figure even among the Zephyrians. His ceremonial armor gleamed with embedded crystals that showed his rank, but his expression was troubled. "Father," Lirelei said, turning from the window. She did not bow as deeply as protocol demanded, and they both knew it. "We need to talk," he said, his voice carrying the weight of command that had ruled an empire for 40 years. "The situation has grown worse," Lirelei had heard the reports. The Krillian horde had destroyed another colony world in the Outer Rim. Their savage attacks were becoming more frequent and more devastating. The Empire's military was stretched thin, trying to defend too many worlds with too few ships. "The Admiralty estimates we have lost 12% of our fleet in the past year," Thaction continued. "The Krillians are using new tactics we cannot counter. Our traditional battle formations are failing." "What does this have to do with me?" Lirelei asked, though she already suspected the answer. "We need allies," her father said. "The Altarian Republic is too weak. The Nexus Confederation is already fighting their own wars." "But there is a new option," Lirelei raised an eyebrow. "New? The humans," Thaction said. "They call themselves the Terran Federation. First contact was made 6 months ago. They are, young species, primitive by our standards, but they have defeated several hostile alien races despite being badly outnumbered." Lirelei had heard rumors about the humans. They were small creatures, barely reaching 6 feet in height, with pink or brown skin and strange round eyes. Most Zephyrians considered them an amusing curiosity, hardly worth notice. "Their technology is crude," Thaction continued, "but their military record is surprisingly impressive. They have never lost a war, even against species far more advanced than themselves. Admiral Korath believes they might be useful allies." "And what do they want in return?" Lirelei asked. "A formal alliance," her father said, "sealed by marriage." The words hit Lirelei like a physical blow. She stared at her father in disbelief. "You want me to marry a human?" Their ambassador, a female named Lisa Carter, suggested it during negotiations. They have a military officer, a captain named Ryan Brooks, who is considered suitable for diplomatic marriage. He commands one of their warships. "A human," Lirelei repeated. "Father, they are barely civilized. They only achieved faster than light travel a few decades ago. Their ships are made of metal and ceramic, not living crystal. They eat cooked meat and breathe unfiltered air." "I am aware of their primitive nature," Thaction said, "but we are running out of options. The Krillians will not stop until they have conquered or destroyed every world in our space. If the humans can help us defeat them, then their barbaric customs are a small price to pay." Lirelei turned back to the window. The city below sparkled with bioluminescent lights, a testament to thousands of years of Zephyrian civilization. "The idea of marrying one of those strange alien creatures seemed impossible. The court will mock you," she said. "They already call me the shamed princess. If you marry me to a human, They will say you have truly given up on finding me a proper husband. Let them mock, Thakshan said, and for the first time in months, his voice softened slightly. I have been thinking about your refusal to marry Lord Vextar. Perhaps you saw something the rest of us missed. Perhaps there is wisdom in choosing one's own path. Lirelei looked at her father in surprise. He had never spoken to her like this before. The humans have strange customs, he continued. Ambassador Carter explained that their marriages are partnerships, not ownership transfers. The female keeps her own name and property. She has equal say in important decisions. It is very different from our ways. Different, Lirelei said quietly, but perhaps not entirely wrong. The human captain is arriving next week with a small diplomatic team, Thakshan said. You will meet him and decide if this alliance is possible. If you refuse, I will find another way to deal with the Krillians. But I hope you will consider it. After her father left, Lirelei remained at the window long into the night. She thought about Lord Vextar and his cruel eyes. She thought about the Krillian attacks and the fear in the outer colonies. She thought about the strange humans and their impossible military victories. The next morning, word of the proposed marriage spread through the palace like wildfire. By afternoon, the entire court was buzzing with gossip and outrage. Prince Valdris confronted her in the garden, his face flushed with anger. A human? He said. Sister, this is madness. You have already shamed our family enough. Now you would marry an alien barbarian? I have not agreed to anything yet, Lirelei said. The nobles are laughing, Valdris continued. They say father has grown so desperate that he would give his daughter to any creature willing to fight for us. They say the royal bloodline will be polluted with primitive alien DNA. And what do you say? Lirelei asked. Valdris looked uncomfortable. I say you should do your duty to the Empire. But surely there must be a better way than this. Lady Seraphina, Lirelei's closest friend, found her that evening in the palace library. The older woman's elegant features were troubled as she sat down across from the princess. I have been researching the humans, Seraphina said, placing a data crystal on the table. Their history is fascinating and terrifying. They are a species that seems to thrive on conflict and adversity. Tell me, Lirelei said. They have fought wars constantly throughout their history, Seraphina explained. But they have also shown remarkable adaptability and innovation. When faced with superior enemies, they do not surrender. They find new ways to fight, new strategies, new technologies. They turn their weaknesses into strengths. And Captain Brooks? A decorated officer. He has commanded ships in 3 major battles against hostile aliens. His record shows creativity and courage, but also compassion. He refused to fire on enemy civilian ships during the Proxima campaign, even when it would have been tactically advantageous. Lirelei studied the data crystal thoughtfully. The court expects me to refuse. Of course they do, Seraphina said. They expect you to maintain your pride and reject this barbarian suitor. They want you to remain the shamed princes forever. But what if I surprise them? Then you might just save the Empire, Seraphina said, and perhaps find something you never expected to find. As the week passed, preparations began for the human arrival. The palace staff cleaned and prepared guest quarters, though many grumbled about hosting primitive aliens. The noble families gathered in the capital to witness what they assumed would be a humiliating spectacle. Princess Lirelei spent her time reading everything she could about human culture and history. The more she learned, the more intrigued she became. These creatures had conquered their homeworld despite being physically weaker than most predators. They had united their species despite vast cultural differences. They had reached for the stars with determination that bordered on obsession. Perhaps she thought there was more to them than anyone realized. Perhaps her father's desperate gamble might actually work. And perhaps, just perhaps, this strange marriage might be the beginning of something neither species had ever imagined. The day before the humans were scheduled to arrive, Lirelei stood once again at her window, watching the purple moons rise. But this time, her violet eyes held something they had not held in months: hope. The Terra Nova dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system with a flash of blue light that was visible from the capital world's observation towers. Princess Lirelei watched from her balcony as the human ship approached, its metal hull gleaming dully against the starfield. Compared to the graceful, living crystal ships of the Zephyrian fleet, it looked crude and primitive. "Look at that thing," Prince Valdris said, joining his sister at the balcony railing. "It appears to be held together with bolts and welds. Do they not know how to grow their vessels from crystal matrices?" "Perhaps they have their own methods," Lirelei said quietly. She had been studying human technology for days, and while it was different from Zephyrian science, it was not without its own logic. The human ship docked at the main orbital station, and within hours a shuttle descended toward the palace landing pad. Lirelei made her way to the throne room, where her father waited with the full court in attendance. The massive chamber was filled with nobles in their finest robes, their blue and purple skin glowing with embedded jewels that marked their rank. "They are so small," whispered Lady Muriel, one of the court's most influential gossips. "I heard they are barely 6 feet tall." "And their skin is so plain," added Lord Careth. "Pink and brown, with no luminescence at all? How do they show their status?" The great doors of the throne room opened, and Ambassador Lisa Carter entered first. She was a middle-aged human woman with short brown hair and intelligent dark eyes. Her simple black diplomatic uniform looked stark against the elaborate Zephyrian court dress. Behind her walked Dr. Amy Patterson, a young woman with red hair, and Lieutenant Commander Kevin Walsh, a tall man with graying temples. Finally, Captain Ryan Brooks entered the throne room. He was exactly 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a confident bearing. His dark brown hair was neatly trimmed, and his green eyes swept the room with calm assessment. He wore the dress uniform of the Terran Federation Navy, dark blue with silver trim and several medals on his chest. The court fell silent as the humans walked the length of the throne room. Lirelei could hear the whispers starting again. The humans looked so ordinary, so unremarkable compared to the towering, luminescent Zephyrians. But there was something in their bearing, especially in Captain Brooks, that spoke of quiet strength. "Your Imperial Majesty," Ambassador Carter said, bowing in the human style. "I present Captain Ryan Brooks of the Terran Federation Navy, commander of the starship Terra Nova." Emperor Thaction rose from his crystal throne, his 7-foot frame imposing even by Zephyrian standards. "Welcome to Zephyria, Captain Brooks. We are honored by your presence." Ryan stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, I am honored. To be here, the Terran Federation looks forward to a strong alliance with your empire." "His voice is so flat," Prince Valdris muttered to a nearby lord. "No resonance at all. How do they sing their war chants?" The formal reception continued for an hour, with speeches and ceremonial gifts exchanged. Ryan presented the Emperor with a ceremonial sword from earth, forged from steel, and inscribed with words in the human language. In return, Thaction gave him a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light. "This crystal contains the essence of our homeworld," the Emperor explained. "It will glow as long as the bearer remains true to their oath." "I will treasure it, Your Majesty," Ryan said, accepting the gift with both hands. Throughout the ceremony, Lirelei watched the human captain carefully. He was polite but not servile, respectful but not intimidated. When Lord Careth made a subtly insulting comment about human intelligence, Ryan simply smiled and changed the subject. When Lady Muriel asked if humans could see properly with their strange round eyes, he answered with patience and even humor. After the formal reception, there was a feast in the great hall. The humans were seated at the high table, and Lirelei found herself placed next to Captain Brooks. Up close, she could see that his green eyes held depth and intelligence, and there were small lines around them that spoke of both laughter and strain. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I hope this arrangement is not too unpleasant for you. I understand that diplomatic marriages are not always welcome." Lirelei was surprised by his directness. "You speak of it openly? Why should I not?" Ryan asked. "We are both adults, and we both understand the political necessities. But I want you to know that I do not expect anything from you that you do not freely give." In human culture, marriage is a partnership, not an ownership. So I have heard, Lirale said. Tell me, Captain, what do you think of our empire? Ryan glanced around the great hall, taking in the soaring crystal columns and the bioluminescent decorations. It is magnificent, he said. Your people have achieved wonders, but I sense that you are troubled by something beyond the Krillian attacks. What do you mean? Your military doctrine, Ryan said carefully. From what I have observed, you rely heavily on superior technology and overwhelming force. These are good advantages, but they can become weaknesses if your enemy finds ways to counter them. And humans do not rely on superior technology? Lirale asked. Ryan smiled. Princess, humans rarely have superior technology. We usually have inferior weapons, fewer ships, and less advanced equipment than our enemies. We win by being stubborn, creative, and willing to try things that seem impossible. Give me an example. The Battle of Kepler Station, Ryan said. We faced an enemy with ships twice the size of ours and weapons that could destroy our vessels with a single hit. So we stopped trying to fight them ship to ship. Instead, we used our smaller size and greater maneuverability to get close enough to ram them. We turned our weakness into a strength. Lirale found herself genuinely interested, and it worked? We lost half our fleet, Ryan said honestly, but we won the battle. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the other end of the table. Prince Valdris had risen from his seat, his face flushed with wine and anger. I propose a demonstration, he called out loudly. Let us see what these famous human warriors can do in actual combat. Captain Brooks, would you honor us with a sparring match? The great hall fell silent. This was clearly not part of the planned festivities, and several nobles looked uncomfortable. But others, especially the younger ones, seemed excited by the prospect. Ryan looked at Lirale, then at Emperor Thaction, who gave a slight nod. I would be honored, Your Highness, he said. Rising from his seat, the court moved to the palace's training arena, a circular chamber with a sand floor and weapon racks along the walls. Prince Valdris selected a traditional Zephyrian blade, a curved sword made of crystallized energy that hummed with power. Ryan examined the available weapons and chose a simple metal sword, much heavier and cruder than the Zephyrian weapon. First blood, Prince Valdris announced. Standard rules. The two combatants faced each other in the center of the arena. Valdris was taller and stronger, with natural advantages in reach and power. His energy blade could cut through almost any material, while Ryan's metal sword was purely physical. The match began with Valdris pressing the attack, his blade moving in precise, elegant patterns that had been perfected over centuries. Ryan gave ground, parrying desperately and looking outmatched. The watching nobles smiled and nodded. This was going exactly as expected. But Lirale noticed something the others missed. Ryan was not just retreating randomly. He was studying his opponent, learning the patterns, watching for weaknesses. When Valdris made a particularly aggressive thrust, Ryan stepped aside and brought his heavy sword down on the prince's wrist. The blow was not hard enough to cause serious injury, but it was enough to make Valdris drop his weapon. First blood? To the human, announced the referee, pointing to a small cut on Valdris's hand. The arena erupted in shocked murmurs. Prince Valdris stared at his hand in disbelief. How did you do that? Your technique is perfect, Ryan said, offering his hand to help the prince up, but perfection can be predictable. You repeated the same attack sequence 3 times. I simply waited for the 4th. You let me attack you just to learn my patterns? Sometimes the best way to win is to lose first, Ryan said. You are a skilled warrior, Your Highness, but you have been trained to fight other Zephyrians who think like you do. The Krillians probably do not think like you either. Later that evening, Lirale found herself walking with Ryan in the palace gardens. The 3 purple moons were rising, casting strange shadows among the crystalline trees. The court is talking about your victory, she said. They are not sure whether to be impressed or offended. I hope I did not embarrass your brother too badly, Ryan said. That was not my intention. You showed respect for his skill while demonstrating your own, Lirale said. That was diplomatically wise. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, past fountains that sang with flowing water and flowers that glowed with soft light. Finally, Ryan spoke again. "Your Highness, may I ask you something personal? You may ask. Why did you refuse to marry Lord Vexstar? I have read the reports, and the alliance would have been valuable to your empire." Lirelei was quiet for a long moment. "Have you ever met someone and known immediately that they were capable of great cruelty?" "Yes," Ryan said simply. "Then you understand? I could not bind myself to such a person, no matter the political advantages." The wedding took place 3 weeks later in the great temple of Zephyr, a massive crystal structure that had stood for over 1,000 years. Representatives from dozens of star systems attended, though many came more out of curiosity than respect. The galactic news networks called it the most unusual diplomatic marriage in recorded history. Princess Lirelei wore traditional Zephyrian robes of flowing silver that seemed to move like liquid starlight. Her hair was braided with luminescent crystals that matched her violet eyes. Captain Ryan Brooks stood beside her in his dress uniform, looking small but dignified next to her 7-foot frame. The ceremony itself was a careful blend of both cultures. The Zephyrian priest spoke the ancient words of binding, while Ambassador Lisa Carter read human marriage vows that emphasized partnership and mutual respect. Major Tony Harrison and Captain Helen Davis stood as Ryan's witnesses, while Lady Seraphina supported Princess Lirelei. "Do you, Princess Lirelei of the House of Faction, take this human as your partner in all things, to stand with him in times of peace and war, in prosperity and hardship?" the priest asked. "I do," Lirelei said, her voice carrying clearly through the temple. "Do you, Captain Ryan Brooks of the Terran Federation, take this daughter of Zephyr as your partner in all things, to stand with her in times of peace and war, in prosperity and hardship?" "I do," Ryan replied. When the ceremony ended, the couple exchanged rings in the human tradition and touched foreheads in the Zephyrian way. The crowd erupted in polite applause, though many of the noble guests whispered among themselves about the strangeness of it all. At the reception, Lord Careth approached Emperor Thaction with barely concealed disdain. "Your Majesty, I hope this experiment proves worthwhile. The other empires are already questioning our judgment." "Let them question," Thaction replied. "Results matter more than opinions." Meanwhile, representatives from the Altarian Republic and the Nexus Confederation watched the proceedings with interest. Ambassador Veltar of the Altarians spoke quietly to his aide. "If this alliance works, it could shift the balance of power in this entire sector." The celebration was interrupted by urgent news. A communication officer rushed into the Great Hall and whispered something to Admiral Korath, the Empire's senior military commander. The Admiral's face went pale, and he immediately approached the Emperor. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "we have received a distress signal from Nexus 7. The Krillian Horde has launched a major attack on the outer colonies." The wedding feast suddenly became a war council. Ryan and Lirelei, still in their wedding clothes, found themselves in the palace's strategic command center along with the Empire's top military leaders. The main display showed the Nexus 7 system under assault by dozens of Krillian warships. "The garrison there has only 6 ships," Admiral Korath explained. "They cannot hold against this force. We need to send reinforcements immediately." "How many ships can we spare?" Emperor Thaction asked. 15, perhaps 20 if we pull vessels from other sectors," the Admiral replied. "But that will leave other worlds vulnerable." Ryan studied the tactical display carefully. The Krillian ships were moving in perfect formation, their attacks coordinated and devastating. "Admiral, what is the standard response to this type of attack?" "We mass our forces and meet them head-on," Korath said. "Superior firepower and disciplined formation fighting. It has worked for centuries." "But it is not working now," Ryan observed. "The Krillians are adapting. Look at their attack patterns. They are not fighting like the old reports described." "What do you suggest?" Thaction asked. "Let me take a small force to Nexus 7, Ryan said. "Not to engage the main fleet, but to observe their tactics and find weaknesses." "Absolutely not," Admiral Korath said firmly. You command a single ship, Captain. This requires a proper battle fleet. A battle fleet that will arrive too late, Ryan pointed out. The Terra Nova is fast and maneuverable. We can reach Nexus 7 in 6 hours. And do what exactly? Prince Valdris asked. Your ship cannot defeat an entire Krillian fleet. No, Ryan agreed. But we might be able to help the defenders hold out until reinforcements arrive. And we might learn something useful about these new Krillian tactics. Emperor Thaction looked at his new son-in-law thoughtfully. What do you need? Just my ship and crew, Ryan said. And permission to act independently. You have it, the Emperor said, ignoring the shocked expressions of his military advisors. Princess Lirelei stepped forward. I am coming with you. Absolutely. Not, Ryan said immediately. This is a military operation, not a diplomatic mission. I am now your wife, Lirelei said firmly. In Zephyrian culture, that means we share all responsibilities. Besides, you will need someone who understands Imperial communication protocols. Your Highness, with respect, this is too dangerous, Major Tony Harrison interjected. Major, I have been trained in combat and tactics since childhood, Lirelei replied. I will not be a burden. Ryan looked at his new wife, seeing the determination in her violet eyes. Very well. But you follow my orders aboard my ship. Agreed, Lirelei said. 2 hours later, the Terra Nova departed from Zephyria with Princess Lirelei aboard. The human ship's bridge was cramped compared to Zephyrian vessels, but it bustled with efficient activity. Lieutenant Commander Kevin Walsh served as executive officer while Dr. Amy Patterson monitored communications. Hyperspace jump in 30 seconds, reported Navigation Officer Lisa Park. Lirelei stood beside Ryan's command chair, still wearing her wedding dress, but now with a military communication headset. The defenders are reporting heavy casualties, she said. They have lost 2 ships already. Time to Nexus 7? Ryan asked. 4 hours, 17 minutes, Walsh replied. Too long? Ryan muttered. Can we push the engines harder? Not safely. Chief Engineer Bob Martinez called from his station. We are already at maximum safe velocity. Then we go past maximum safe velocity, Ryan decided. I would rather arrive with engine damage than arrive too late to help. The Terra Nova shuddered as the engines strained beyond their design limits. In the engineering section, alarms began to sound, but Martinez's team worked to keep the ship together. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace at Nexus 7, the scene was chaos. The Krillian fleet had broken through the outer defenses and was systematically destroying the colony's orbital stations. The few remaining Zephyria ships were fighting desperately, but they were clearly outmatched. Analysis, Ryan ordered. 12 Krillian heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, and multiple smaller vessels, Walsh reported. They are using new tactics. Instead of massed formations, they are fighting in small, coordinated groups. And our defenders? 3 Zephyrian. Ships remaining, all damaged, Dr. Patterson said. They are falling back toward the planet. Ryan studied the tactical display. The Krillians were indeed fighting differently than the old reports suggested. They were more flexible, more creative. They are learning, he said quietly. Captain, we cannot engage that many ships, Walsh pointed out. No, but we can be a distraction, Ryan replied. All hands, battle stations, prepare for hit-and-run attacks. The Terra Nova dove into the battle, its smaller size and greater maneuverability, allowing it to dart between the larger Krillian vessels. Ryan's crew used tactics that the Krillians had never seen before, striking quickly and then vanishing before the enemy could respond. Target their communication arrays, Ryan ordered. If we can disrupt their coordination, we might level the playing field. The human ship's precise attacks began to have an effect. The Krillian formations became confused as their ships lost contact with each other. The surviving Zephyrian vessels rallied, taking advantage of the chaos to strike back. Princess, contact? The garrison commander, Ryan said. Tell him to concentrate his remaining ships on the left flank. We will keep the right flank busy. Lirelei translated the orders into Zephyrian military code, and the defenders began to coordinate their efforts with the Terra Nova's attacks. For a moment, It seemed they might actually hold their own. Then the Krillian fleet commander adapted again. Instead of trying to maintain formation, he ordered his ships to hunt independently. The Terra Nova suddenly found itself facing multiple enemies at once. "Hull breach on Deck 4, reported Damage Control Officer Sarah Kim. "We are losing atmosphere." "Shields at 30%, Walsh called out. "We cannot take much more of this." Ryan made a difficult decision. "All ships, fall back to the planet. We cannot win this fight." As the Terra Nova retreated with the surviving Zephyrian vessels, Ryan transmitted a detailed report to Admiral Korath. The data included everything they had learned about the new Krillian tactics and suggested countermeasures. "At least we bought time for the civilians to evacuate," Dr. Patterson said. "And we learned something valuable," Ryan added. "The Krillians are not just using new tactics. They are evolving their entire approach to warfare." Princess Lirley looked at the tactical display showing the lost colony. "My people will say this mission was a failure." "Your people would be wrong," Ryan said firmly. "We saved thousands of lives and gathered intelligence that might help us win the next battle. Sometimes a strategic withdrawal is more valuable than a glorious defeat." "Is that a human philosophy?" Lirley asked. "It is a survival philosophy," Ryan replied. "And survival is the first step toward victory." The reports from the outer colonies grew worse each day. The Krillian horde had destroyed 6 more worlds in the past month, and their attacks were becoming more coordinated and devastating. Admiral Korath stood before the War Council with his face grim, displaying holographic images of burning cities and shattered fleets. "We have lost 37 ships in the last 4 weeks, he announced to the assembled military leaders. "At this rate, we will lose the entire Outer Rim within 6 months. Emperor Thaction sat in his command throne, his yellow eyes reflecting the flames from the destroyed worlds. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" "We must pull back our forces and establish a defensive line at the middle colonies," Korath replied. "We cannot continue to fight them with our current tactics. That means abandoning 12 worlds and over 50 million citizens," Prince Valdris said angrily. "Surely there must be another way." "There is," said a voice from the back of the room. Captain Ryan Brooks stepped forward with Princess Lirley beside him. They had been married for 2 months now, and their partnership had become the subject of much discussion in the court. "Captain Brooks," Admiral Korath said with barely concealed irritation, "this is a meeting for senior military commanders." "And I am a senior military commander," Ryan replied calmly. "At least I will be if you accept my proposal." "What proposal?" Emperor Thaction asked. Ryan activated a holographic display showing fleet formations and tactical diagrams. "Promote me to Admiral and give me command of a mixed human Zephyrian task force. Let me train your officers in human tactics and teach them to think like humans think." The room erupted in angry voices. Several Zephyrian admirals rose from their seats, their faces flushed with indignation. "This is outrageous," shouted Admiral Zextar. "You would put an alien in command of our ships?" "A barbarian who has commanded only 1 vessel," added Admiral Morduk. "He knows nothing of large-scale fleet operations. He knows enough to have survived every battle he has fought," Princess Lirley said quietly, but her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "Can the same be said for all of you?" The room fell silent. Several of the admirals looked uncomfortable, remembering their recent defeats. "Explain your proposal," Emperor Thaction said to Ryan. "The Krillians are adapting because they are learning from each battle," Ryan explained. "They study our tactics and find ways to counter them. But they are learning to counter Zephyrian tactics, not human tactics." "And what makes human tactics so special?" Admiral Korath asked skeptically. "We are unpredictable," Ryan said. "Zephyrian military doctrine is based on discipline, formation, and superior technology. These are strengths, but they are also patterns that can be learned and countered. Humans fight differently. We adapt constantly, we improvise, and we use our weaknesses as weapons." "Give us an example," Prince Valdris said. Ryan changed the holographic display to show the Battle of Nexus 7. "At Nexus 7, we were outnumbered 20 to 1. Traditional Zephyrian tactics would have called for a massed frontal assault. Instead, we used hit-and-run attacks to disrupt their communications and coordination. We turned our smaller size into an advantage. And you still lost? Admiral Zextar pointed out. We lost the battle, Ryan admitted. But we saved 40,000 civilians and gathered intelligence that will help us win the war. Sometimes losing one battle is the price of winning the campaign. Emperor. Faction studied the tactical displays thoughtfully. What would you need for this task force? 20 ships to start, Ryan said. Half human, half Zephyrian. Mixed crews on every vessel, and the authority to train them in combined tactics. The crews will not work well together, Admiral Korath warned. The cultural differences are too great. The crews at Nexus 7 work together, Princess Lirale said. I was there. I saw Zephyrian and human officers coordinating their attacks in real time. It can be done. Your Majesty, Admiral Mordak said desperately, this is madness. You cannot put the fate of the Empire in the hands of primitives. These primitives have never lost a war, Ryan said calmly. Perhaps it is time to learn from them. Emperor. Faction was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood from his throne. Admiral Brooks, he said, and Ryan realized he had just been promoted. You have your task force. But you will answer directly to me. If this experiment fails, the consequences will be severe. Understood, Your Majesty, Ryan said. I will not disappoint you. The next weeks were chaos as Ryan worked to assemble his mixed fleet. The human ships were smaller and less advanced than their Zephyrian counterparts, but they were more maneuverable and had better communication systems. The Zephyrian vessels brought superior firepower and defensive shields. The real challenge was training the crews to work together. Colonel Nathan Clark, one of Ryan's most experienced officers, worked with General Korath's aide to develop new communication protocols. The humans taught the Zephyrians about flexible tactics and rapid adaptation, while the Zephyrians shared their knowledge of energy weapons and shield technology. Princess Lirale proved to be invaluable as a liaison between the two cultures. Her understanding of both human and Zephyrian military traditions helped smooth over countless misunderstandings and conflicts. The Zephyrian officers are struggling with the concept of independent action, she reported to Ryan during one of their evening briefings. They are trained to follow orders precisely, not to improvise. And the human officers? Ryan asked. They are frustrated by the formal chain of command, Lirale said. They want to act immediately when they see problems, but the Zephyrians expect proper consultation and approval. We need to find a middle ground, Ryan mused. Something that uses the best of both approaches. The breakthrough came during a training exercise 3 weeks later. Commander Alex Mitchell, captain of the human destroyer Neptune, was working with Captain Valkyrian of the Zephyrian cruiser Starblade. The two ships were practicing coordinated attacks when they encountered an unexpected scenario. Simulated. Enemy reinforcements incoming, reported the training computer. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Captain Valkyrian began to follow standard procedure, requesting permission to withdraw from the exercise coordinator. But Commander Mitchell acted immediately, ordering his ship to cover the Zephyrian vessel while it completed its withdrawal. Why did you not wait for authorization? Valkyrian asked later. Because waiting would have gotten us both killed, Mitchell replied. In combat, sometimes you have to act first and explain later, but what if your action was wrong? Then I would take responsibility for the consequences, Mitchell said. But doing nothing is also a choice, and sometimes it is the worst choice of all. Valkyrian pondered this. So you believe it is better to act and be wrong than to wait and be safe? I believe it is better to act and be alive than to wait and be dead, Mitchell corrected. The key is knowing when to act and when to wait. This conversation became the foundation for new combined tactics. The mixed crews learned to balance Zephyrian discipline with human initiative, creating a fighting force that was both coordinated and adaptable. The first real test came at the battle of Sigma Draconis, where a Krillian fleet had trapped a convoy of refugee ships. The enemy force included 8 heavy cruisers and numerous smaller vessels. All using the new coordinated tactics that had proven so effective, Ryan's task force arrived to find the refugees under heavy attack. The traditional response would have been to form a battle line and engage the enemy fleet directly. Instead, Ryan divided his forces into 3 groups, each with specific objectives. Group Alpha, draw their attention with a frontal assault, he ordered. Group Beta, circle around and attack their rear formations. Group Gamma, evacuate the refugees. Remember, we are not trying to destroy them all, we are trying to save lives. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Human ships darted between the larger Krillian vessels, using their speed and maneuverability to avoid destruction while delivering precision strikes. Zephyrian ships provided heavy firepower support, their energy weapons cutting through enemy shields with devastating effect. The Krillian commander, expecting a traditional battle, found himself facing an enemy that refused to fight according to established rules. When he concentrated his forces to crush the frontal assault, the rear attack destroyed his supply ships. When he turned to deal with the rear attack, the evacuation group rescued another transport full of refugees. "They are not fighting like Zephyrians," the Krillian commander reportedly said to his officers. "They are fighting like something else entirely." The battle lasted 6 hours, and when it ended, the Krillian fleet was forced to retreat. More importantly, all the refugee ships had been saved, and Ryan's task force had suffered only minor casualties. The victory at Sigma Draconis sent shockwaves through the Empire. For the first time in months, the Zephyrian military had achieved a decisive victory against the Krillian horde. The news traveled quickly through the galactic networks, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about the human admiral and his mixed fleet. "The court is talking about nothing else," Lady Seraphina told Princess Lirelei. "They are calling your husband a military genius." "He is not a genius," Lirelei replied. "He is simply someone who thinks differently than we do. And that difference is exactly what we needed." The success at Sigma. The Krillian horde arrived at the Zephyrian home system with a fleet larger than anyone had imagined possible. 500 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. At the center of the fleet flew the massive command ship of Warlord Caxthul, a vessel 3 times the size of any Zephyrian battleship. "By the crystal gods," Admiral Korath whispered as he watched the tactical display. "How did they assemble such a force?" Admiral Ryan Brooks stood in the command center of the space station orbiting Zephyr, surrounded by human and Zephyrian officers working side by side. His mixed fleet had grown to over 200 ships, but they were still badly outnumbered. "They have been gathering ships from across the galaxy," Princess Lirelei said, reading intelligence reports. "Every victory against us brought more species to their cause. They believe the Zephyrian Empire is finished." "Maybe they are right," Prince Valdris said quietly. He had changed much in the past months, working closely with human officers and learning their tactics. "We have never faced anything like this." "No," Ryan agreed. "But they have never faced anything like us either." The Emperor entered the command center, his massive frame making the room feel smaller. "Admiral Brooks, what are your orders?" "We do not meet them in traditional battle formation," Ryan said, activating the holographic display. "They expect us to form a battle line and trade shots with their superior numbers. Instead, we divide our forces into 5 groups, each with a specific mission." "Explain," Emperor Thaction commanded. "Group 1, led by Admiral Jake Morrison on the Terran ship Freedom, will conduct hit-on-run attacks on their flanks. Group 2, commanded by Admiral Zartos on the Zephyrian battleship Crystal Spear, will protect the orbital stations. Group 3 will evacuate civilians from the outer moons. Group 4 will target their command ship. Group 5 will be our reserve." "And which group will you command?" the Emperor asked. "Group 4, Ryan said. "Princess Lirelei and I will take the Terra Nova directly at their command ship." "That is suicide," Admiral Korath protested. "The command ship is surrounded by their best defenders." "Exactly," Ryan said. "They will never expect us to attack their strongest point. And if we can eliminate their command structure, their coordination will collapse. The Terra Nova is too small for such a mission, Prince Valgus said. Take my flagship instead. No, Ryan replied. We need speed and maneuverability, not firepower. The Terra Nova is perfect for this job. Princess Lirelei stepped forward. I will command the Zephyrian elements of Group 4. My ship, the Starfire, will accompany the Terra Nova? Absolutely not, Ryan said immediately. This is too dangerous. Ryan, Lirelei said, using his first name in front of the entire command staff. We are partners. We have been through everything together. I will not abandon you now. Ryan looked at his wife, seeing the determination in her violet eyes. Very well, but we do this my way. Always, she said with a smile. The battle began at dawn Zephyrian time. The Krillian fleet advanced in massive wedge formations, their weapons charging with ominous energy. Warlord Caxthul broadcast a message across all frequencies. Zephyrians, his harsh voice echoed through space, your empire ends today. Surrender now, and some of you may live as slaves. Resist, and you will all die. Emperor Thaction's response was broadcast from the palace. Krillian scum, you have chosen to fight the wrong species. Today you will learn why the Zephyrian Empire has endured for 10,000 years. The opening moves went exactly as Ryan had planned. Admiral Morrison's Group 1 struck at the Krillian flanks, using human fast attack tactics to disrupt their formations. The enemy tried to respond, but their ships were too large and slow to catch the darting human vessels. Admiral Zarthus's Group 2 took positions around the orbital stations, their heavy weapons creating a defensive barrier that the Krillians could not easily break. The evacuation ships of Group 3 began moving civilians from the outer moons to safety, but the real action was happening in the center of the battle, where Ryan and Lirelei led their combined force toward the massive Krillian command ship. The Terra Nova and Starfire were accompanied by 12 smaller vessels, half human and half Zephyrian. Enemy fighters incoming, reported Lieutenant Commander Kevin Walsh. At least 50 of them. Starfire, take the lead, Ryan ordered. Use your superior shields to clear a path. Princess Lirelei's ship moved forward, its crystalline hull glowing with energy. The Zephyrian vessel's weapons cut through the enemy fighters like a blade through silk, while the Terra Nova followed in its wake. Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Damage Control Officer Sarah Kim. We are losing atmosphere. Seal it and keep going, Ryan ordered. We are almost there. The command ship loomed ahead of them, its massive bulk bristling with weapons. Smaller Krillian vessels moved to intercept the attacking force, but they were met by the escort ships under Commander Alex Mitchell and Captain Velkarian. This is insane, Dr. Amy Patterson said from her communications station. We are flying directly into the most heavily defended target in their fleet. Sometimes insane is the only sane choice, Ryan replied. Princes, are you ready? Ready, Lirelei's voice came through the communicator. Starfire is targeting their main engines. Terra Nova should go for the command bridge. Understood. Oh. Ships, attack pattern Omega. This is our one chance. The combined human Zephyrian force struck the command ship from multiple angles. The Starfire's energy weapons tore huge holes in the enemy's engine section, while the Terra Nova's precise missiles targeted the command bridge. The escort ships fought desperately to keep the enemy defenders away from the two flagships. For a moment, it seemed like the attack might succeed. The command ship's engines were failing, and its command systems were damaged. But then Warlord Caxthul himself appeared on the communication screen. Clever little mammals, he snarled. But you have only delayed the inevitable. Even if you destroy this ship, my fleet will crush your pathetic defenses. Maybe, Ryan said, but they will have to do it without you. The Terra Nova's final missile struck the command bridge, and the massive ship began to break apart. Warlord Caxthul's image flickered and died as his command center was destroyed, but the victory came at a cost. The Terra Nova had taken severe damage, and several of the escort ships were destroyed. The Starfire was badly damaged, its crystal hull cracked and leaking atmosphere. Lirelei, are you all right? Ryan called over the communicator. I am fine, she replied, though her voice was strained. But my ship is dying. The crystal matrix is failing. Abandon ship, Ryan ordered. We will pick up your crew. No, Lirelei said firmly. The Starfire still has one final service to perform. Before Ryan could ask what she meant, the Zephyrian ship changed course and headed directly for the largest group of Krillian vessels. Princess Lirelei was going to ram them, sacrificing her ship to destroy as many enemies as possible. Lirelei. No, Ryan shouted. This is my choice, she replied. And it is the right choice. The Starfire's crystal core will create a massive explosion. It will destroy at least 20 enemy ships. I will not let you die alone, Ryan said, ordering the Terra Nova to follow the Starfire. You will not die at all, Lirelei said. Transport. Off your ship, I will pick up your crew. I am not leaving you, Ryan said. You are not leaving me, Lirelei replied. You are saving the Empire. That is what we both swore to do. The two ships flew together toward the enemy fleet, their crews, working frantically to transport survivors between vessels. At the last moment, Ryan and his key officers beamed aboard the Starfire, leaving the Terra Nova on automatic pilot. Together, Ryan said, taking his wife's hand as they watched their ships approach the enemy. Together, Lirelei agreed, the explosion. When both ships struck, the Krillian fleet was visible from the planet's surface. The Terra Nova's nuclear reactor and the Starfire's crystal core created a blast that destroyed 30 enemy vessels and severely damaged 50 more. But Ryan and Lirelei were not aboard either ship when they exploded. At the last second, they had transported to Admiral Morrison's ship, the Freedom, along with their combined crew. That was completely insane, Admiral Morrison said as they watched the explosion from his bridge. It was also completely successful, Ryan replied. Look at the enemy fleet. The destruction of the command ship and the massive explosion had thrown the Krillian fleet into chaos. Without central coordination, their formations broke apart. Some ships fled, others fought among themselves, and many simply drifted without orders. Admiral Zartos seized the moment, leading the defensive fleet in a coordinated attack that scattered the remaining Krillian forces. Admiral Morrison's fast attack groups hunted down the fleeing ships, while the evacuation fleet returned to help with the final cleanup. By the end of the day, the Krillian horde was destroyed as an organized force. Some ships escaped, but they would never again threaten the Empire. The victory was complete and decisive. The celebration in the palace that night was unlike anything in Zephyrian history. Humans and Zephyrians celebrated together, their cultural differences forgotten in the joy of victory. Emperor Thaxion stood before the assembled crowd with Ryan and Lirelei beside him. 6 months ago, he said, many of you mocked me for giving my daughter to a human suitor. You called it desperation, weakness.